Okay everyone, welcome to lab this week. We're going to discuss safety and handling in a bit more detail. And our hope is that we also set a little bit of precedent on the way we want you to do things out here at the Equine Center. Many of you guys have been around horses all your life, you've grown up around them, some haven't, that's perfectly okay. We're going to kind of lay the groundwork and the foundation so that everything is done the same way. One of those reasons is obviously for consistency for our horses. It's a bit confusing for them if one person asks them to do something, the other one asks for it differently, and then maybe people get mad about a different approach. And so again, consistency is big with our horses. The other one is safety. Okay, we want you guys to be safe around horses. Oftentimes, if you guys have grown up around horses, you got a horse at home, maybe they're bomb-proof, we become complacent, okay? And it's usually when we become complacent that we start doing something that's probably not the brightest idea. Horse reacts, and then maybe all of a sudden we get hurt or injured. And so, again, we're going to start off talking about a few halters right here, types of halters, and then we're going to go out to the pens and talk to you a little bit more about haltering, approaching, catching that horse, and then we're going to go back to the outdoor arena and discuss maybe moving around that horse, lunging, etc. And so with that, I've got three different halters in my hand. You might say, well, I know about halters, I don't need to know anymore, but again, most of the time we just pick a halter up to go put it on a horse, and maybe we don't think about the purpose or the reason behind it. And so in my hand right here, I just have a typical nylon halter, okay? And so what do you think would just be a main use of this? So hopefully you're kind of saying a few things to yourself. We'd oftentimes just call this a general purpose, all-purpose halter. But when we compare this to some of the other materials, you'll see some key differences, okay? And so we can talk about some advantages and disadvantages to this. In terms of strength and weakness, this is pretty strong halter. But where is it going to break if something's going to break? It's going to break on the hardware, okay? It's not going to break in the middle of the nylon generally, not unless you've just worn it and cleaned it in half, but it's going to break on the hardware. But generally pretty strong. You've got pretty wide nose bands and width across the entire halter, the pole, crown piece, etc. And so again, this works out pretty well for just to get general use. Some of these you will see all of a sudden have a clip on the throat latch piece right here. This one does not. Again, if you're out here at the Equine Center and you're using a halter, don't bother with that throat latch piece. Please always undo these at the actual crown piece when you're putting it on the horse, and we'll talk about that as we halter. But these horses are all different shapes and sizes. If you go up to try to catch a horse and you just undo it at the throat latch and put it over their head, it's liable to not fit. And if that horse doesn't like to be caught, maybe you got to take it back off and you lose your chance. And so just keep that throat latch piece buckled and always undo them at the crown piece. And so we'll come back to this nylon one, I'm sure, but just a good kind of general all-purpose, pretty strong. We could compare that to this leather halter that we have right here. What would be some purposes of this leather halter? Okay, you're probably telling yourself maybe you used it in show, or use them in some sales. You go to the thoroughbred world, thoroughbred industry, everyone's got their own leather halter with their little nameplate on them, and so they look nice. Okay, this one needs a little TLC. It hasn't been conditioned in a while. If you don't condition leather and take care of it, it does start to dry rot and become very stiff over time. So again, this one hasn't seen the best of days, but good example for you. So if you had to compare a strength of this leather halter to this nylon halter, which one's stronger? The nylon one's stronger, okay? This leather is more apt to break, okay? And there can be pros and cons to that, okay? If you go over to the ERL, probably not the best idea of things we do, but we keep halters on these recips all the time because they can be tough to catch, okay? But we keep nylon halters on like this. What could be a downside of keeping a nylon halter on a horse like this all the time? Well, maybe they get hung or they get snagged on something. The likelihood of this breaking is pretty slim, okay? And so sometimes you'll see a combination or kind of a hybrid of these two, okay? You'll see a nylon halter with a leather crown piece, and oftentimes you'll hear these referred to as a breakaway halter. Usually that leather crown piece that you see right here is just a single piece of leather. It's not a double stitched piece of leather like this one right here, okay? And so again, just something to keep in mind. If this is going to break, again, it just depends on the halter. It's liable to break at the hardware. It might also break on the leather. Again, just probably depends on the event and where it's applying stress, okay? Width of everything across the nose piece, crown piece, etc. is all about the same as the nylon, and so no more pointed pressure in one of these versus the other, but again, strength of them would be a little bit different, okay? The next and last one that we could talk about would be a rope halter, okay? And so why might you use this rope halter over, say, this leather and nylon one that we just discussed? Well, this one provides a bit more pointed pressure. Maybe you're using this with a young horse, a horse that you need to provide a little bit more correction to, okay? One, it's a more pointed pressure on the ropes itself as compared to the flat surface of the nylon and the leather halter. And then you also have these knots right here, okay? These knots are, again, applying a more pointed pressure to that horse, okay? And so again, you might choose this. Now, one thing when you look at this halter as compared to your leather and your nylon one is, what do you notice? There's no hardware on this whatsoever, okay? And that hardware became the weak point on this leather halter and this nylon halter, okay? Well, now there's no leather to break. And so which one of these three halters is the strongest? Well, this rope halter becomes the strongest of all three of these because there's no hardware. And so if you're trying to teach a horse to tie and they keep sitting back, tie them to a very high object, patience pull something else, they can sit back in this all day and not hurt themselves and not break this halter, okay? And so very, very strong, okay? The other thing that I want to tell you guys is there is a right and a wrong way to tie this rope halter, okay? And I'll get a little closer just so that you guys can see this, but you do need to make sure you are doing it correctly, okay? And so when I say that, so if you look at this right here, the right way is to go below the knot right here, below the loop right here, okay? And so when you tie this, you go basically around itself, okay? And then back through, but you encompass this loop right here, okay? And then the other thing is that the tail is going to point back. And so if you looked at this right here, tail's pointing back. You don't want this tail pointing forward, flapping the horse in the eye. And again, you want this to basically encompass and be below the loop. I'll tie this in the wrong fashion. That can be tough to do sometimes. And so if we tied this above, like you see right here, okay? It's still pointing back, but now it's above the loop, okay? This is incorrect, okay? This, if you have a horse that sits back on, will snug this knot down so tight, you're probably not gonna be able to get it back off. You might be cutting this off the horse, okay? The reason that the difference is, we'll tie it back the correct way. And so if we encompass this loop and we tie it below like this, horse sits back on this, we get this really tight, we can use this top loop right here as a bit of a release. And so we can then pry this open and then we can easily get this undone, okay? And so again, tie it below the loop and the tail always facing to the back of the horse, not to the front, flapping them in the eye. And so again, you can then choose which halter is your choice for the day, okay? Based on the task that you're doing, the horse you're working with, etc. If you're out here at the equine center, go in the Western tack room, you're much more likely to find rope halters. Go in the English tack room, you're much more likely to find nylon halters. We don't have too many leather ones around, but it's totally up to you and what you want to use. You just have to determine that based on the task at hand. And so with that, I think we're going to go out to the pens and we're going to talk to you a little bit more about approaching horses, how we want you to catch them, lead them, etc., and just some basic approaches. Again, please keep an open mind, again, because we want you to be doing things in a consistent fashion out here and to ultimately stay safe. And so let's go walk over to the pens. Okay, everyone, so we've walked over to one of our horse pens, and again, just want to go over a few things to keep in mind as we enter our pens, and then as we're going to then catch and halter a horse after that. And so the first thing to keep in mind, all of our pens are chained. They go through lash and they'll have a carabiner on them, okay? When you unlock the pen, again, please make sure when you return that chain back to it that you lock that carabiner, okay? A lot of our horses, probably this one as well, love to play with these chains, and then if you don't lock, I'll just take it off for a minute so you guys can see, if you don't lock this carabiner right here back to the chain, then again, the horse starts playing with it. Next thing you know, they open the gate, and we've got a pen of horses that are loose walking around the property, okay? And so please do lock the carabiner back to itself on the chain, okay? It is inevitable if you have horses that at some point in time they're probably going to get out. It's happened here at the equine center many a times. We've come in sometimes and the horses and the colts are up grazing in the grass next to the statue, okay? Less than ideal. At night we've got a perimeter fence that goes all the way around. Of course they're contained if it's during the day and the facility's open and all of a sudden horses get out, go up and close the front gates, okay? I don't care what else is going on. I don't want our horses getting out onto the main road. Same would go if you have a property at home or elsewhere. Again, close those gates, don't let them out somewhere, and again, try to keep them as safe as possible. And so, biggest thing, latch the carabiner. If something does get out, you don't need to chase them all over the place. We'll get them caught. Maybe go lock those front gates just momentarily. And so let's go ahead and walk in this pen, and then we'll talk to you a little bit about how we want you to approach and halter these horses, okay? Okay, y'all, so now that we've entered the pen, just talk to you about a few things that I want you to keep in mind before you go catch and halter one of these horses, okay? And the first of which is that I want you to be prepared, okay, when you enter the pen in terms of having your halter and your lead rope ready, okay? And so what I don't want you to do is to have all this in a bird's nest, and you've got a pile like this, and you walk out to one of these horses to go catch them, and you spend 30 seconds to a minute trying to get your halter all of a sudden straightened out before you go and actually catch and halter that horse itself, okay? Some of these horses are really easy to catch. Some of them become a little sour over time, and they're not always the easiest to catch. And if they are one of those latter, if you have this in a ball and all over the place, you might have just lost your one chance to catch and halter that horse. And so I would tell you, again, have it ready just like so. If you want, even better, you could unbuckle that crown piece and then just hold it in your hand just like so, okay? Now, the other thing I want you to keep in mind when you enter these pens, I see a pony over there, we've got a little Norwegian fjord, we've got mares, we've got geldings, we've got a lot of different horses in various pens. Always watch the hierarchy of these pens. You're going to have somebody that sits at the top of the totem pole, somebody that sits at the bottom. You watch these horses a minute ago in the background. They might be pinning their ears, chasing each other around, and you need to watch the body language of the horses and how they're moving and make sure you're not getting in the middle of something, okay? Ultimately, I want you to stay safe, okay? And so if this horse all of a sudden charges after that horse, ears are pinned, again, you know, maybe a little bit of aggressive behavior. None of these horses should be aggressive towards you as humans at all, okay, or they wouldn't be here. But again, they still have a hierarchy between each other, and so you need to pay attention to that and making sure that you're not getting in the middle of a situation and that you are staying safe, okay? Sometimes they start chasing each other around the pen, okay? So we're talking about going up and actually approaching a horse, haltering a horse. We could talk about this horse, we could talk about the one in the background, but when you are going up and approaching a horse, what is the best method to be able to approach them and at what angle? Hopefully, you're not saying that I'm going to approach them directly at the head like this or directly from behind, okay? A good rule of thumb would be about 45-degree angle to the shoulder, okay? And so this horse's shoulder that sits right here, we could go 45-degree angle this way, walking towards to approach, or you could go 45-degree angle from the front. Either way, that 45-degree angle, again, it's less intimidating to that horse. Remembering that fight or flight response, these horses are a prey animal. Whether you like it or not, you're a predator, okay? We've diminished that fight or flight response a good bit with these horses. You saw them coming up to the camera, coming up to us, but you do have to inherently keep that in mind. That shoulder, full of muscle, it's really safe, least intimidating for them versus walking straight towards the front of them or straight towards the back of them. So again, we're going to do 45-degree angle to the shoulder, either right here or here. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about approach now. We can go over and halter this horse. Again, we've got our halter ready. I've got my lead rope in one hand, halter in the other, crown piece is undone, and so I am now prepared to go up and halter this horse. Again, I can come in 45-degree angle to the shoulder here, or I could come in 45-degree angle to the shoulder here. When you walk over to this horse, again, I'm perfectly fine with you laying the lead rope over top of the horse just like so, okay? This horse wants to walk away, I all of a sudden have a hold of the lead rope and I can keep them from just making one step, okay? But if this horse behind also wants to pin his ears and bite him on the butt and he takes off running, I'm not gonna hold on and go skiing across the entire pen. I can simply just all of a sudden let go of this and this horse can now walk away, okay? And so I don't want you to get in the middle of some fight or something like that. That's not the whole point. The whole point is just have a little bit more control before you put that halter on, okay? Again, halter is ready, crown piece is already undone. We talked about not doing this directly from the front, not slapping the crown piece. And so easiest way to do this is basically just to, again, hold on to the halter like so, okay? And so what I really want you guys to do, again, is just be able to simply go up and lay this over top of the pole. What I don't want you to do, we'll show you, is this classic just slapping it up over like this, okay? And so all you have to do is you can basically put it on, hand it back to yourself, just don't slap it over the top, okay? And so we'll buckle all these. This is a good example of a halter right here that has a throat latch piece on it where you can undo that. If it's the halter that's used on the same horse all the time, it's your personal horse, that's fine, okay? It's always gonna fit your horse once you have it adjusted, okay? But on our horses, since you're putting them on all different shapes and sizes, just leave that throat latch there attached, okay? And so, again, easy peasy. Again, when you wanna go ahead and undo this, you can then just do that reverse approach, okay? All of our horses are pretty good about putting halters on. But again, if you need to apply a little bit of pole pressure, sometimes you can do that, and you can see they'll lower their head a little bit, and maybe you can make that a little bit easier to then put that halter on, okay? And so now that we've talked about basically approaching the horse, halting the horse correctly, again, big thing is consistency. The other piece of that is safety. We could talk a little bit about leading, okay? And again, not to get back to anything crazy and basic, but a few things to keep in mind, right? One would be that, again, no wrapping of lead ropes around your arms, none of this, okay? I know we all become lazy, but you walk off like this, horse bolts, and all of a sudden this wraps around your neck and you're tangled up in it, okay? So don't do any of that, okay? Don't wrap this around your arm. This is something that you can just loop back and forth and then hold on to, okay? I'm fine if you do one hand like this, or I'm fine if you do two hands simply like this, okay? But you're not gonna wrap this around any body parts, okay? Now, where's a good place to lead this horse? Well, again, a good place to lead this horse would be just in front of his shoulder. And again, you might be 12 inches or so from the actual buckle, okay? You might think you have more control if you're holding on to the snap right here, but you really don't, okay? And so try not to do this. You actually have less control. Again, you want things to be a little bit of a give and release. This horse comes towards you and you want them to. Again, all of a sudden they have a little bit of pressure. There's a release of pressure. There always has to be a release. There's no release if you're just constantly pulling them and yanking them around, okay? Other things to keep in mind. One, this horse should not be leading you. Most of our horses have pretty good manners. If they're walking 2 feet in front of you, they need a little lesson to hopefully respect your space. You are hopefully leading them. But at the same token, I don't want you to be 4 feet in front of this horse leading them across the paddock or something like that, okay? You're not dragging them, you're not becoming complacent, and you're just so far out in front of them that it doesn't make sense, okay? And so again, keep those things in mind. We have these good horses, they become bomb-proof, they're so good to be around, and we get a little lax and lazy in our ways. So again, foot or so from the buckle, not wrapped around any body parts, holding on just like so. You can lead any of these horses anywhere you want to go, okay? So with that, the last thing that we could talk about and mention would be turning these horses loose, okay? And so anytime you come back in one of these pens, and so if you're going to come in and you're going to turn a horse loose, what I want you to do is walk into the pen. Once you walk into the pen, turn that horse around so that you have an easy exit back towards the gate, and then from there you can start to undo your crown piece and allow the horse to go, okay? Now, if you have a horse that wants to start to take off, some people might undo it like this, keep him here for a second, and make sure it's on your terms. That's fine, okay? I don't want any of these horses bolting off. Again, you can see I let this horse go, and he's perfectly fine. I don't want him darting off. I want it to be on good terms, okay? But make sure you have an easy exit back to the gate and that you're not stuck in the middle of the pen should they turn around, kick buck, and then take off, okay? If there's multiple of you guys coming out to the pen to let horses loose, make sure you all let them go at the same time, okay? It's respectable for your neighbor, okay? If you let yours go and they just take off running, bucking, and kicking, and the next person's still holding on to theirs might be hopping up in the air trying to get going to go follow the rest of the crew over there, okay? And so just let's, say, oh, let's let them go now, okay? And if you let them go at the same time, again, it's a little bit safer approach for everyone involved, okay? And so hopefully, again, just some basics on making sure you have everything ready in your hand, approaching that horse 45-degree angle from the shoulder, making sure that, again, we're not doing this directly from the front, we're not slapping any crown pieces up over top. Another good way, that you could do this would be just to simply go like so, okay? and then you can put this halter on, okay? And so whatever works for you, but I just don't want you slapping that hard up over the pole, okay? And so with that, let's go back to the outdoor arena. We'll talk about a few more points back there. Okay everyone, so we're back here at our arena now. We just walked over from the pens. I just want to talk to you about a few quick things about height to tie a horse properly, making sure it's a safe, solid object, moving around them, and then we'll talk just briefly about a little bit of lunging, okay? And so this horse we've got tied to this arena fence right here. A good rule of thumb in terms of height is to tie to an object that is wither height or higher, okay? And again, if you tie to an object that's wither height or higher and that horse does sit back, they're much less likely to be able to get their full leverage behind them, and they're also less likely to injure their own neck or back. And so wither height or higher, good rule of thumb. Some people tie to big patience poles. I've seen cables between two trees that people will tie to. And so anything like that is safe, as well as this just nice high bar like this, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is to make sure that it is a solid object, okay? This arena fence is brand new, but every one of these posts is concreted in the ground, and this top rail is all welded together, okay? And so this horse can sit back on this all day and it's not going anywhere. What I don't want you to tie to is something like that truck mirror or that temporary stall panel or anything where that horse sits back and they might take that object with them, okay? Then all of a sudden, they have no clue what's in front of them, and they're more concerned with that object that's chasing them behind that they're tied to. And I've seen horses run clean into the side of a barn or a vehicle or something else. And so please, again, do your due diligence, make sure it's a good solid object, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is when you're moving around a horse, there are right and wrong ways. Again, we become complacent all the time. If I want to get from this side of the horse to the other, first, no ducking underneath the neck right here while this horse is tied, okay? People will do it all the time, okay? I don't want to see that. Why might that be a bad idea? Well, okay, sure, this horse could move forward like this, he could start to paw, he could hit you with a foot, but if he does sit back and a horse actually sits back, what's their next reaction after they sit back? They jump and lunge forward and they're going to be right on top of you, and that can happen in a split second, okay? And so it's just a bad idea. It's not worth it, okay? And so if you're going to go around from one side to the other, there's two main schools of thought, okay? One school of thought would be that you could go extremely close to the horse, you could keep a hand on them the entire time and move from one side to the other, okay? I'll push this horse back over just a little bit. Okay? And so, again, we can keep a hand on them, move completely right next to them, and if they were to kick me, again, it might sting a little bit, but they can't get their full force behind. And so hand on very close, or your other option becomes what? We can walk well around that horse that we're out of kicking range, okay? And that if they were to kick, they're not going to get me, okay? And so either school of thought I am fine with, just make sure it's a safe approach and you're not walking right directly behind them and kind of that danger. The last thing you want to do, especially with a horse you don't know, is to get kicked, okay? And so keep those things in mind in terms of height to tie a horse, solid object, and moving around. And so let's throw this horse on the lunge line. Let's just talk about a few things from there. Okay, y'all. So I've got this horse on the end of a lunge line, and then my goal here is not to talk to you about the right or the wrong way to lunge. It's just to mention a few key points that I want you guys to keep in mind should you be lunging any of these horses, okay? I've got this lunge line just clipped on the bottom of the halter. We could clip it on the side right here. I'm perfectly fine with that as well. Again, if we are lunging a horse on a bridle, we might take this, go up over the pole, and then hook it on the other side. Lots of different ways we could do that. Totally up to you in the approach, okay? Like I said, I just want to talk to you about a few key things. Just like I mentioned, going up and haltering that horse, having that halter and that lead rope together, not in a bird's nest, the same would hold true here when you're lunging, okay? I've got this lunge line together in a fashion that I can easily let line out, and it's not in a bird's nest where I'm looking down trying to untangle it as I'm trying to push this horse out on a circle and actually lunge it. So be prepared in anything that you do. That's one thing that I would ask of you, okay? And so if we put this horse out on a circle, I've got a lunge whip in my hand, but you're gonna see this is basically just going to serve as an extension of my arm should I need it, okay? It's cold outside today, and I doubt this horse is gonna need it. He's probably gonna wanna move around quite a bit. So let's see. So we're just pushing him out on a circle a little bit right now. and I just want this horse to walk. Now, the biggest thing to remember is a little bit about that flight zone, okay? Now, that shoulder kind of being that balance point, okay? And as I say, behind that shoulder, I can drive that horse forward. If I all of a sudden start to get in front of that shoulder, you see that horse start to slow down, okay? And so based on where I'm at on that balance point, I can change how that horse reacts. And so we'll just keep pushing this horse forward. And I just want him to walk for now, but based on how much pressure I apply, I can obviously control what that horse is doing. Now, the other thing that I want you guys to keep in mind when you are lunging is that I want you to stay planted, okay? And what I mean by that is you stay in one spot as this horse moves and evolves around you, okay? What I don't want to happen, that I see all too often sometimes, is the person starts off here lunging, next thing you know they're on the side of the other side of the arena, okay? We're not long lining right now, okay? We're just lunging. And so you stay planted as this horse moves all the way around, okay? If you start to see them slow down, walk. That's okay. It's cold out today. I'm not going to get mad at the horse, but I want him to walk right now, okay? And again, we can get in front of him in that balance point, and we can keep him walking, okay? I don't know this horse. I don't know how this horse is lunged, and I've never lunged this horse before. That's perfectly fine, okay? I do think all horses should know how to lunge. What are some various purposes that we may lunge a horse? Well, some might be just to get a little bit of those bucks out before you hop on that horse for the first time, okay? It might be for exercise, okay? It might be for that young horse as we're working them before we can get on their back. We do a lot of groundwork, and we just simply lunge them. It might be on a bridle, and I put side reins on them. It might be for lameness diagnostics, okay? Remember that as we walk in a circle, that lameness is going to be more pronounced than it is in a straight line. There are lots of different reasons that you may choose to lunge a horse, but I think all horses should know how to lunge, okay? And so this horse is moving around in a circle right now. Again, you can see nothing is tangled in our line. I've got this lunge line. Through my other hand, I can feed out. I can change the diameter of this circle or the radius between me and this horse very easily. Walk on. And again, if I anticipate this horse wants to start to stop, we're going to keep him in that gait, whether it's the walk, trot, canter, whatever it might be. I'm keeping this lunge line or this lunge whip behind me. And again, if I need it, I can put it forward and it creates kind of this pie shape, extend to my arm, drive this horse forward. This horse really doesn't need that much pressure right now, though, okay? We want to move up in gait. One thing I would tell you, again, one is your position to that balance point. Horses also respond well to voice cues, okay? So if we want to move up in gait, say a trot, trot, okay? Then a horse picks up our gait. And so we're just going to keep him in this gait. We're going to anticipate the horse starts to slow down, break gait. We're going to keep him in. Just like riding, we could do a slow, more collected trot. We could extend that out. We could take this up to the canter. I'm not sure if we'll go up to the canter today. It's a little muddy out here in the arena, and I don't want this horse slipping out here. It's just not working, okay? But we want to come back down to the WLAK and walk. So we can get in front of that balance point, bring that horse back down to the walk, keep him on that same diameter circle, and where you are, and easily move through your gait. But again, every horse should be able to stay on the end of the lunge line, go in a circle, and you can keep yourself together as well. Trot. Again, voice cues are great. I like to get up in tempo, and then walk. And so this horse did it. Off the voice cues and everything else. So again, it's helpful for these horses to be able to go through. I like things that are black and white for the horses. You want to make it as understanding as possible for them, okay? So you ask horses I've never lunged this horse before. You ask them to stop. If they want to turn and face like this, that's fine. If they want to stop on the end of the circle, that's fine too. It all depends how they've been trained. I can't fault this horse if he was taught when I say whoa to turn and face me like such versus stop on the exact edge of the circle where he was, okay? If you want to get him to do that, that's fine, but I can't expect that of him right at this moment, okay? So with that, hopefully you guys learned a good bit about, again, haltering approaching that horse, things that we would do out here at the equine center. Again, tying with our head or high or solid object, lunging. The last thing I want to show you today is just a couple quick knots, and we'll tell you why to use those certain knots. Again, what you use on your own time at your own barn with your own horses is, again, up to you, but we do things for a reason. If you can't ask why, then we don't have any business doing it, but we always ought to be able to tell you why we do something. And so with that, we're going to show you a few up close knots before we end for the day. Okay everyone, so last thing I want to talk to you about is just a few knots and the right and the wrong way to maybe do a few things depending on the activity that you are doing with the horse. And so you guys are probably all used to just a classic quick release knot. I grew up doing them. And so you would do a classic quick release like this. You sit back like this and it snugs up against the rail. But if a horse was to sit back on this right now, this knot becomes so tight, it is no longer a quick release, okay? If you've ever had a horse sit back on a knot like this, okay? And so good in theory, but when it sits back, you might be cutting it off this fence post or anything like that. And so one thing that I want to show you is the bowline knot, okay? Now a classic bowline knot, if you guys have ever done anything like climbing or anything like that, the cool thing about a bowline knot is what? Well, the cool thing about a bowline knot is that it does not tighten on itself, okay? And so right here, we have just a classic bowline that you could look at, okay? We could take this and we could play tug of war and do anything we want with this, okay? But I can always get this undone because I can come over, this is my release, and then this whole knot just comes apart, okay? And so that's one thing to remember about that bowline knot. Again, you might have heard just kind of the rabbit goes through the hole, and again, goes around and then back through itself, just like so. And so this is what that bowline looks like. This loop right here is always that release, okay? And so with that, we can do a modified version of that with our horses, okay? And let me show you that. And that's one thing that we'll usually use. Everybody uses some version of a bowline knot out here at the equine center, because it is one knot that does not tighten back on itself. No matter how hard a horse ever sits back, we can always get it undone. And so when we do a bowline knot, we're going to take the horse side, and so you can see the horse side, I've got the tail right here. Horse side, flip up, make a loop. We're going to take the tail, throw it down through the middle of that, grab it from underneath, and then fold it in half and just stick it through and snug back. I can take this and I can sit back on this all I want, no matter what I'm doing, okay? And I can always come back over to this, and just as easy as I want, this becomes our release. Push this back through here, and then I can always get this undone, okay? And so very good knot because it doesn't tighten back on itself, okay? And so quick release knot, I have no problem if that's what you want to use. Just realize horse sits back, it's gonna be tough to get undone. So I'll show you that one more time. Again, horse side, we'll have our horse hold that. Horse side, again, flip up into a loop, tail down through the middle, grab back around itself, fold in half, stick through the hole, and then snug back, okay? And so that's your easy bowline knot. There are a lot of other knots that you could do that are fun out there. And again, we've seen people do everything from bank robbers knots to other things over time, and that's totally up to you. But at the end of the day, I do want you to know how to do the bowline knot. And so with that, hopefully you guys learned a good bit today as it relates to safety and handling. Should you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know, or the TAs, and we're happy to help out. So have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you guys soon.